Evelyn Hart's hands trembled as she stared at the pregnancy test on her marble bathroom counter. The morning sun, streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, illuminated two pink lines, unmistakable, undeniable. A cruel twist of fate that made her want to laugh and cry simultaneously. 3 weeks, just 3 weeks after signing the divorce papers from tech billionaire Julian Reed, and here she was, carrying his child. She sank onto the heated bathroom floor, her silk robe pooling around her like spilled wine. The irony wasn't lost on her. How many times had she dreamed of this moment during their 18 months of marriage? How many times had she imagined telling Julian he was going to be a father, watching his stormy gray eyes light up with joy, but not like this. Never like this. The bathroom, like everything else in her life, was a study in careful curation, minimalist design, organic products, the same aesthetic that had made her wellness empire so successful. Evelyn pushed herself up, catching her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same as she had yesterday, all high cheekbones and determined hazel eyes, her chestnut hair falling in perfect waves, the face of Serene Life Co., the wellness app and lifestyle brand that had just secured Series B funding. No one would guess that her perfectly ordered world had just tilted on its axis. Her phone buzzed on the counter, another email about the upcoming board meeting. The notification banner showed 3 missed calls from her PR team. They were probably still dealing with the aftermath of the divorce announcement. The tabloids had been relentless. Tech golden, couple calls, it quits. Wellness queen walks away from billion. Dollar love story, Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelor back on the market. If they only knew the truth. Evelyn closed her eyes, but the memory rushed in uninvited. That sunny Tuesday afternoon when she decided to surprise Julian at his office with lunch from their favorite sushi place. How she'd walked past his assistant's empty desk, pushed open his office door, and found him with Cassandra Lee, his VP of Marketing. Cassandra, with her perfectly tailored dress hiked up, perched on Julian's desk, Julian standing between her legs, his hand. Evelyn's eyes snapped open, her stomach churning. Morning sickness, she told herself, though she knew better. Some wounds were still too fresh, even 3 months later. She walked into her closet, a room bigger than her first apartment, and began her morning routine, selecting a cream cashmere sweater and high-waisted trousers. She armored herself in the cultivated image she'd built. Evelyn Hart, self-made millionaire, founder and CEO of Serene Life Co. Woman who'd walked away from one of the world's most eligible bachelors because she refused to accept anything less than respect and fidelity. But as she fastened her gold necklace, a wedding anniversary gift, she hadn't been able to bring herself to remove her fingers, brushed against her still flat stomach. Everything was about to change again. Her phone rang, displaying her assistant's name. Evelyn, the Carter deal team is already in the conference room. They're eager to discuss the West Coast expansion. Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes, Evelyn replied, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. She ended the call and looked down at the pregnancy test, still clutched in her other hand. The news would break eventually. In the cutthroat world of tech and startups, secrets had a way of surfacing at the worst possible moments. Julian would find out. There was no avoiding that. The man who'd built Reed Innovations from a dorm room project into a $50 billion empire didn't miss details, especially ones that could affect his carefully managed public image. Evelyn slipped the test into her Hermes bag, unable to leave it behind as evidence for her housekeeper to find. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she walked through her apartment, past the space that still felt empty without Julian's presence. The living room where they'd slow danced after closing their first major investors, the kitchen where he'd attempted to cook her birthday dinner, setting off all the smoke alarms, the terrace where he'd proposed at sunset, promising her forever. In the elevator, Evelyn caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked composed, controlled exactly as she'd trained herself to appear during endless investor meetings and press conferences. No one would guess that beneath her polished exterior, her world was splintering again. The doorman tipped his hat as she strode through the lobby. "Your car is ready, Miss Hart." She nodded, pleased that at least her voice didn't shake when she thanked him. Outside, her driver held the car door open, and Evelyn slid into the leather back seat, immediately opening her laptop to review the Carter deal documents. But the words blurred before her eyes as reality settled over her like a heavy cloak. In 9 months, there would be a baby, a living, breathing piece of Julian. A permanent link to the man she'd forced herself to walk away from. Their child would have her trust fund, her hazel eyes, his dark hair, his smile. Evelyn's finger hovered over Julian's contact in her phone. She'd never deleted his number. Though she told herself it was just for business purposes, their companies still had overlapping interests, after all. The car stopped at a red light, and a street vendor's stand caught her eye. Fresh flowers, including the white peonies Julian used to bring her every Friday without fail. Even during their worst fights, those flowers would appear, until the day they didn't, and she'd found him with Cassandra instead. Evelyn locked her phone, squaring her shoulders. She had built her company on helping people find balance and peace in their chaotic lives. Now it was time to take her own advice. She would tell him she owed him that much, but not today. Today, she needed to focus on the Carter deal, on her company, on the empire she'd built with her own 2 hands. The baby, though the baby was another story, a new chapter, a beginning wrapped in an ending. Like so many things in life, as her car pulled up to her office building, Evelyn took a deep breath, gathering her strength. She was Evelyn Hart. She had walked away from a billion-dollar marriage with her head held high. She had built a company from the ground up. She had survived heartbreak and betrayal. She could survive this too. But as she stepped out onto the sidewalk, her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. And for a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future she hadn't dared dream of since the day her marriage crumbled. A child with Julian's determination and her compassion. A little person who would combine the best of both of them. Then the moment passed, and Evelyn straightened her spine, pulled on her CEO smile, and walked into her building. She had a board meeting to run, a company to lead, and approximately 9 months to figure out how to tell her ex-husband that their story wasn't quite over yet. Little did she know, uptown in his own penthouse office, Julian Reed was about to receive a news alert that would change everything. Wellness Empire Expansion, Serene Life Co. CEO Evelyn Hart, spotted at Manhattan Women's Clinic. The wheels of fate had begun to turn. Chapter 2. The storm breaks. Julian Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, Manhattan sprawling beneath him like a glittering chessboard. His phone lay on his desk, screen still illuminated with the article about Evelyn's clinic visit. He'd read it 17 times in the past hour, analyzing every word, every implication. The sky outside darkened with approaching storm clouds, mirroring his turbulent thoughts. 3 months, 1 week, and 4 days since she'd walked out of his life, not that he was counting. His fingers drummed against the window, leaving smudges on the pristine glass. The same fingers that had once traced patterns on Evelyn's skin, that had tangled in her chestnut hair, that had fumbled trying to fasten her necklace on their first anniversary. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed, the board is waiting in the conference room." "Cancel it," he said, his voice rough. "Cancel everything today." "Sir, the quarterly projections." "I said cancel it, Lauren." He rarely raised his voice, but something in his tone must have conveyed his state of mind, because the intercom went silent. The first fat raindrops hit the window as Julian paced his office. The clinic mentioned in the article specialized in obstetrics. He'd checked. Of course he'd checked. Had called in favors, made discreet inquiries, the kind of thing that would have infuriated Evelyn if she knew. But she wasn't his wife anymore, wasn't his to protect or shelter. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Evelyn herself. His heart slammed against his ribs as he opened it. "We need to talk. I'm pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. 2 sentences, 8 words, a universe of implications. Julian's hands shook as he tried to call her straight to voicemail. Again, 20 times he called, each time hearing her professional voicemail greeting, each time hanging up without leaving a message. What could he possibly say? Thunder rolled outside as he strode to his private elevator, barking orders into his phone. "Get the helicopter ready now." "I don't care about the storm." "Make it happen." His pilot protested. The weather was worsening. Visibility was poor. Julian didn't care. He'd spent 3 months respecting Evelyn's space, honoring her decision to walk away, swallowing the truth about Cassandra's machinations, because his pride and shame had paralyzed him. Not anymore. The helicopter ride was turbulent, rain lashing against the windows as they navigated between Manhattan skyscrapers. Julian barely noticed, his mind a loop of memories. Evelyn's face the day they met, when she'd pitched her wellness app idea to his venture capital firm. Her expression when he'd first kissed her, half shocked and half delighted. The way she'd looked walking down the aisle, so radiant it hurt to look at her. The devastation in her eyes that day in his office when everything fell apart. They landed on her building's helipad as lightning split the sky. Julian's suit was soaked through before he reached the roof access door, his usually perfectly styled dark hair plastered to his forehead. The security guard recognized him. Of course, he did. Everyone knew the story of Evelyn Hart and Julian Reed. Tech's golden couple turned cautionary tale. The private elevator seemed to crawl between floors. Julian loosened his tie, feeling like he was suffocating. What right did he have to be here? He'd lost that right the day he let her walk away without fighting for them, without telling her the truth about Cassandra's calculated destruction of their marriage. The elevator opened directly into Evelyn's penthouse, their penthouse, once. He'd insisted she keep it in the divorce, unable to imagine her anywhere else. Now, standing in the familiar space, he was assaulted by memories. Game nights with takeout spread across the coffee table, lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper together on the terrace, the night she told him she loved him for the first time, right there by the kitchen island. "You can't just land a helicopter on my roof, Julian." Her voice gawed. Her voice. She stood in the hallway leading to her bedroom, wearing a cream sweater that made her skin glow. One hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, and the sight knocked the air from his lungs. "You're pregnant," he said, voice cracking. Very observant. Is that what they're teaching at Harvard Business School these days? Her sarcasm was familiar. A defense mechanism he knew well. But there was something else in her eyes. Uncertainty. Vulnerability. Fear. "I know I have no right to be here," he said, taking a step forward, water dripping from his clothes onto her hardwood floors. "But that's my child too." Evelyn's carefully constructed walls began to crack. He saw it in the slight tremor of her lower lip, the way her fingers twisted the gold necklace she still wore, the one he'd given her on their first anniversary. "The child, yes," she said quietly. "But I'm not yours anymore, Julian. You made that choice." He took another step forward. She raised her hand to stop him. "Don't. Your girlfriend might not appreciate it." The bitterness in her voice was like a physical blow. "She was never my girlfriend, Eve. I've been alone since you left. Every night, every day. Funny, that's not what it looked like with her legs wrapped around you in your office." The memory made him flinch. "It wasn't what you think. Cassandra. Don't." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "Don't say her name in my house." "Our house," he corrected automatically, then regretted it when he saw her eyes flash. "You lost the right to call anything ours the day you betrayed everything we built together." Lightning illuminated the room, casting harsh shadows across their faces. In that brief, brilliant moment, Julian saw the tears she was fighting back, and his heart shattered all over again. "I never betrayed you," he whispered. "I was set up. Cassandra orchestrated the whole thing because I'd rejected her advances. But when you found us, when I saw your face," he ran a hand through his wet hair, "I was too ashamed to fight it, too proud to beg. I thought you deserved better than a husband you couldn't trust." Evelyn swayed slightly, and instinct had him crossing the room to steady her, his hands on her elbows, gentle, familiar. She didn't pull away immediately, and hope bloomed, dangerous and bright, in his chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the storm outside. "Because that's my child you're carrying." His thumb brushed against her sweater, just above where their baby grew. "Because I've spent every day since you left drowning in regret. Because I love you, Evelyn. I never stopped." She jerked away from him then, wrapping her arms around herself. "Love isn't enough, Julian. Trust is everything. You let me believe the worst. You let me walk away thinking you'd chosen her over everything we had. I know." The words felt like glass in his throat. "I know I handled everything wrong, but please, Eve, please let me be part of this." Let me prove to you that I can be the man you deserved. Thunder crashed outside, making the windows rattle. Evelyn moved to the window, staring out at the storm-darkened city. Her reflection was overlaid against the rain-streaked glass, and Julian was struck by how young she looked in that moment, how vulnerable. "I have a board meeting in an hour," she said finally. "I need you to leave." "Evelyn, I'm not saying no to your involvement with the baby," she clarified, still not looking at him, "but I need time. This isn't just about us anymore." Julian wanted to argue, to stay, to pull her into his arms and never let go, but he'd lost that right. So instead, he nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours about arrangements," she added, her CEO voice firmly in place. "To hell with lawyers," he said quietly. "When you're ready to talk, really talk, call me. Any time, day or night. I'll be there." He walked to the elevator, each step feeling like lead. Just before the doors closed, he heard her voice, "Julian." He held the door, hope surging again. "Yes?" "Don't." She finally turned to face him, one hand still protectively over her stomach. "Don't send Cassandra to any more board meetings. I can't look at her without seeing that day." The pain in her voice gutted him. "She's gone," he said firmly. "I fired her the day after you left. Should have done it sooner. Should have done a lot of things sooner." Evelyn nodded once, and the elevator doors closed between them. Julian leaned against the elevator wall, his wet clothes forgotten. Upstairs, the helicopter waited to take him back to his empty penthouse, his empire of steel and glass, his life without Evelyn. But for the first time in 3 months, 1 week, and 4 days, he felt something like hope, because somewhere between the storm outside and the storm in their hearts, he'd seen a flicker of the love they'd once shared. And this time, he wouldn't let pride or shame stand in his way. He had a second chance, a child on the way, a woman to win back, and Julian Reed didn't fail at things that mattered. Not twice. Chapter 3. The Mountain to Climb. For 2 weeks after their storm-swept confrontation, Evelyn returned every gift basket Julian sent to her office. Organic pregnancy teas, prenatal vitamins, books on expectant motherhood, all sent back untouched. Each return turned a tiny dagger in his heart. His emails went unanswered, his calls straight to voicemail. The only communication she allowed was through their lawyers, sterile discussions about prenatal medical arrangements and future co-parenting agreements. On the 15th morning, he broke. Evelyn's routine was as predictable as the sunrise. He remembered it from their marriage, had loved this about her. Every morning at 7 o'clock a.m. sharp, she'd walk into the daily grind, the little coffee shop near her office, ordering her usual mint tea. Now, watching through the window as she approached in a flowing navy dress that couldn't quite hide her emerging baby bump, Julian's heart stuttered in his chest. The bell chimed as she pushed open the door. She saw him immediately, how could she not? He'd chosen to sit at their old table, the one by the window where they'd had their first official date, where he'd first realized he was falling in love with more than just her business plan. Evelyn turned on her heel and walked right back out. 5 minutes, he called, following her onto the sidewalk. The morning crowd parted around them like water around stones. "Give me 5 minutes, Evelyn." She kept walking, her chestnut hair catching the early sunlight. "I gave you 18 months of marriage, Julian. Look how that turned out. You read the investigative report my team sent over." He matched her pace easily, his longer stride keeping up with her quick steps. "You know what Cassandra did, what really happened that day." Evelyn stopped so abruptly that a businessman behind them nearly collided with her. "Yes, I read how she orchestrated everything, how she timed it perfectly with my surprise visit, how she'd been planning it for months." Her hazel eyes blazed. "What I don't understand is why you let me believe it. Why you let me walk away thinking you'd betrayed me." The raw pain in her voice made him flinch. Around them, early morning Manhattan buzzed with energy, oblivious to the drama unfolding on its sidewalks. "Because I was ashamed," he admitted quietly. "Not of cheating, I never cheated on you, Eve. I was ashamed that I'd let someone like Cassandra get close enough to hurt you, that I'd been so focused on the company's IPO that I missed the signs, that I'd failed to protect the one thing that mattered most." A taxi honked nearby, making Evelyn jump slightly. Instinctively, Julian moved to shield her from the street noise. She noticed the protective gesture, and something flickered in her eyes. You can't just... She gestured vaguely between them. You can't just show up with explanations and expect everything to be fine. I don't, he said, but I'm asking for a chance to prove myself. Not just for the baby's sake, but for us. Evelyn's hand moved to her stomach, a new habit he'd noticed, one that made his throat tight with emotion every time. There is no us anymore, Julian. But her voice lacked conviction. Then why are you still wearing the necklace I gave you? Her fingers flew to the gold chain at her throat. For a moment, vulnerability cracked through her careful facade. I have a meeting, she said finally. Have breakfast with me first. He gestured to the cafe. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. The internal struggle played across her face. Finally, she nodded once, and relief flooded through him. Inside, he pulled out her chair, an old habit he'd never lost. She ordered mint tea. He got black coffee. Just like before, just like always. The lawyers sent over the co-parenting agreement. She said once their drinks arrived, I'm not signing it. Her eyes narrowed. Julian, I'm not agreeing to scheduled visits and supervised interaction with my child before they're even born. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. I want to be part of this pregnancy, Evelyn. All of it, the doctor's appointments, the ultrasounds, the birth plans, everything. I've already missed so much. His hand twitched on the table, fighting the urge to reach for hers. Please don't ask me to miss more. Evelyn stared into her tea, watching the mint leaves swirl. The first ultrasound is next Thursday, she said finally. 10 o'clock. M. Hope bloomed in his chest. I'll be there. This doesn't change anything between us. Noted. But he couldn't quite hide his smile. It was a start. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Julian read every pregnancy book he could find, researched the best obstetric practices in Manhattan, had his assistant create detailed notes about what to expect at each stage. He arrived at the doctor's office 30 minutes early, his normally immaculate suit slightly rumpled from nervous fidgeting. Evelyn arrived exactly on time, looking radiant in a cream blazer and matching dress. Her eyes widened slightly at his disheveled appearance. Have you been sleeping? She asked, then bit her lip like she wished she hadn't shown concern. Not really, he admitted. Too excited. Nervous. Both. Something softened in her expression. Before she could respond, the nurse called them back. The examination room was small, intimate. Evelyn lay on the table, and Julian stood awkwardly by her head, uncertain of his place. When the technician asked her to lift her shirt, he caught a glimpse of her slightly rounded belly, and his heart nearly stopped. This will be a bit cold, the technician warned. Applying the gel, Evelyn gasped at the temperature, and without thinking, Julian took her hand. She didn't pull away. The room filled with a rapid whooshing sound, their baby's heartbeat. Julian's vision blurred with tears as the grainy image appeared on the screen. Their child, their miracle. Strong heartbeat. The technician said cheerfully, Everything looks perfect. Evelyn's hand tightened in his. When he looked down, he saw tears tracking down her cheeks. Without thinking, he brushed them away with his free hand. Thank you, he whispered. She looked up at him, confused. For what? For letting me be here. For carrying our child. For everything. After the appointment, they stood awkwardly in the hallway, neither quite ready to leave. Would you like to get lunch? He asked hopefully. I have meetings all afternoon. Dinner? Julian. She sighed. This was one appointment. It doesn't mean. I know what it doesn't mean, he interrupted gently. I'm just asking about dinner. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. One dinner, she said finally, but we need to set boundaries. Anything you want. That evening, over pasta, at their old favorite Italian restaurant, they began the slow, careful work of rebuilding trust. Evelyn told him about her pregnancy symptoms, her cravings, her fears. Julian shared his research, his plans to baby-proof both their homes, his hopes for their child. Neither mentioned Cassandra or the divorce or the pain between them. But when Evelyn's hand unconsciously moved to her stomach during dessert, Julian noticed her wedding ring tan line was finally fading. It felt like both an ending and a beginning. As he walked her to her car, Julian fought the urge to pull her close, to kiss her goodnight like he used to. Instead, he simply said, "Next appointment is in 4 weeks." Evelyn nodded. "I'll have my assistant send you the details." "I'll be there." He opened her car door. "And Evelyn?" She paused, one foot in the vehicle. "Yes? I'm going to prove to you that I'm worthy of a second chance. Not just as a co-parent, but as the man you once loved. I promise." She didn't respond, but as her car pulled away, he saw her touch the necklace he'd given her, the one she still hadn't taken off. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close to reconciliation. But it was a start, and for now, that was enough. Chapter 4. The Test. The Skyline room at La Meridian buzzed with Manhattan's Sunday brunch crowd, but Nora Kim's focus remained solely on her best friend. At 4 months pregnant, Evelyn radiated a glow that even anxiety couldn't dim. She picked at her avocado toast while the city spread beneath them through floor-to-ceiling windows, each bite small and hesitant. "He's been different," Evelyn admitted, absently touching her growing bump. Her emerald silk dress draped elegantly over her new curves, making her look both vulnerable and regal. The appointments, the late-night smoothie runs, the daily check-ins, sometimes it feels like the old Julian is back. Nora studied her friend over the rim of her mimosa glass. She'd been there through everything. The whirlwind courtship at Stanford, the fairy-tale wedding, the devastating discovery in Julian's office. She'd held Evelyn through countless tears, watched her rebuild her life, supported her unwavering focus on her company's success. "Men don't change overnight," Nora said finally, setting down her glass with precision. As one of Silicon Valley's top PR consultants, she knew how easily public images could be crafted. "Let me test him." Evelyn's fork clattered against her plate. "Test him? One final check before you even think about letting him back in." Nora's dark eyes gleamed with determination. "You're carrying his child, Eve. We need to be sure this isn't just a performance for the baby's sake." "I don't know." Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, her hand protective over her bump. "It feels manipulative. More manipulative than what Cassandra did to you?" The name hung in the air like poison. Evelyn flinched slightly, and Nora watched painful memories flash across her friend's face. The surprise lunch visit, the compromising position, the media frenzy that followed. "That's different," Evelyn murmured. "Is it?" Nora leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Look, I know you still love him. Anyone with eyes can see that, but love isn't enough. You need to be able to trust him, really trust him." Evelyn stared out at the city skyline, remembering how Julian had held her hand during yesterday's ultrasound, how his eyes had misted over when they'd learned they were having a girl, how different he seemed from the workaholic who'd missed dinner dates and anniversary celebrations. "What exactly are you proposing?" Nora's red lips curved into a smile. "Let me approach him as a potential investor. I've been wanting to expand my tech consultancy anyway. He won't suspect anything. It's a perfectly legitimate business meeting. And then I'll see if the new and improved Julian Reed is really as reformed as he claims to be." She pulled out her phone, already crafting the perfect email. "I know exactly how to push his buttons. I watched Cassandra do it for months before she made her move." Evelyn's face pallid. "Nora, trust me, sweetie. If he's really changed, he'll pass every test with flying colors. And if he hasn't," her expression hardened. "Better to know now, before you let him break your heart again." Evelyn should have said no, should have trusted her instincts that were screaming this was wrong. But somewhere beneath her growing feelings of hope was a kernel of fear. Fear that she was being naive again, that she was setting herself up for another heartbreak. "Nothing too extreme," she cautioned. "Of course not." Nora's fingers flew over her phone screen. "I'll just create some opportunities. See how he responds." 2 days later, Nora strode into Reed Innovations headquarters, wearing a dress that could have been painted on. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. The outfit walked the perfect line between professional and provocative, exactly as intended. "Nora Kim, for Mr. Reed. I have an appointment." The elevator ride to the top floor gave her time to study her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked exactly like the type of woman Cassandra had been. Ambitious, beautiful, dangerous. The thought brought a satisfied smile to her face. Julian's assistant led her into his corner office. He stood as she entered, professional but distant, no hint of the playboy the media had painted him as after the divorce. In fact, Nora noted with interest, he'd rearranged his office. The couch where Cassandra had orchestrated her scheme was gone, replaced by a comfortable seating area clearly designed for business discussions. "Miss Kim, please have a seat." Nora crossed her legs deliberately as she sat, letting her dress ride up slightly. "Call me Nora, please. After all, we have a mutual friend in common." Something flickered in his eyes at the obvious reference to Evelyn. "How can I help you today?" For the next hour, they discussed her business proposal. Julian was attentive, but kept the conversation strictly professional. When Nora accidentally brushed his hand while reaching for water, he smoothly moved his chair back slightly. "Your proposal has merit," he said as the meeting concluded. "But I think Thompson Capital would be a better fit. I'll make an introduction." Nora pouted slightly. "We could discuss it further over dinner. I know a lovely little place." "That won't be necessary." Julian's voice was firm. "I don't mix business with pleasure anymore. I'm sure you understand." Even when the pleasure could be quite substantial, she let the suggestion hang in the air. Julian's expression hardened. "Miss Kim, let me be clear. I love Evelyn. I'm committed to proving that to her, to our child, and to myself. No business deal, no matter how lucrative, and no woman, no matter how attractive, will change that." Nora felt a flutter of satisfaction. Round 1 to the reformed billionaire. Over the next 2 weeks, she orchestrated more encounters. Late-night meeting requests, accidental run-ins, at industry events. Each time, Julian maintained his professional distance, speaking only of Evelyn and the baby, his eyes lighting up at any mention of his ex-wife. The final test came at the annual Tech Innovation Gala. Nora had timed it perfectly. She knew Evelyn was home with morning sickness, knew Julian would be alone and potentially vulnerable. She found him on the terrace, staring at his phone. From her angle, she could see his screen, a text conversation with Evelyn about the baby kicking. "Lovely night," she purred, moving to stand too close, the champagne on her breath calculated, giving him an easy excuse if he wanted to take advantage. Julian stepped back immediately. "Miss Kim, this is becoming inappropriate." "Oh, and what would Evelyn think about these meetings of ours?" She traced a finger down his lapel. "She'd know the truth that I've been nothing but professional while you've attempted to recreate a situation that nearly destroyed my marriage." His voice was steel. "I've been polite out of respect for your friendship with Evelyn, but that ends now. I love my ex-wife. I love our child, and I will spend every day of my life proving myself worthy of a second chance." He turned to leave, then paused. "You can tell Evelyn she passed with top marks for this little test, though knowing her, she's probably feeling guilty about it already." Nora's mouth fell open. "You knew?" Julian's smile was tired, but genuine. "I've spent every day since she left studying my mistakes, learning to read people better. Of course I knew, but I played along because I understood why she needed this certainty." He straightened his tie. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take my daughter's mother some ginger tea for her morning sickness." Later that night, Evelyn opened her door to find Julian holding a tea carrier and a paper bag that smelled of the ginger cookies she'd been craving. His hair was slightly mussed, his bow tie undone. He'd clearly left the gala early. "Nora told me everything," she said quietly, unable to meet his eyes. "I know." He offered her the tea. "I'm not angry, Eve. I understand why you needed to be sure." She accepted the cup, their fingers brushing. The simple touch sent electricity through them both. "When did you figure it out?" "The first meeting." Nora's a terrible actress. She channeled Cassandra a bit too perfectly. His smile was gentle. "Besides, I know you. I knew you'd need absolute certainty before letting me back in, even a little." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. Damn pregnancy hormones. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and wiped away a tear with his thumb. "Every test, every trial, every chance to prove myself to you. I'll take them all. As many as you need." Their daughter chose that moment to kick, making Evelyn gasp. Without thinking, She grabbed Julian's hand and placed it on her bump. "She's strong," he whispered, awe replacing the exhaustion in his eyes. "Like her daddy," Evelyn said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Julian's breath caught. "Eve." "I mean it." She met his gaze, letting him see everything she'd been trying to hide. "You're stronger now. Better than the man I always knew you could be." He swallowed hard. "I had the best reason to change." Standing in her doorway, his hand on their growing child, Evelyn felt something shift in her heart. Trust, like their daughter, was growing slowly but surely. "Would you like to come in?" she asked softly. "She seems to kick more when she hears your voice." Julian's smile could have lit up the Manhattan skyline. "Always," he whispered, "for as long as you'll let me." And as they settled on her couch, his hands cradling her bump while he told their daughter stories about her amazing mother, Evelyn realized something profound. Sometimes love needed to be tested, not to prove its weakness, but to reveal its strength. They had passed every test together. It was time to start believing in second chances. Chapter 5. Temptation's Edge. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with Manhattan's elite during the annual Tech Innovation Summit. But Julian Reed's attention was fixed on his phone. Evelyn had sent another ultrasound photo, their daughter's profile clear in the grainy image. His heart swelled as he traced the curve of her tiny nose, so like her mother's. "That smile must be about the baby," Nora Kim's voice purred as she materialized beside him, her red dress a calculated echo of Cassandra's style. "Or perhaps you're just happy to see me." Julian pocketed his phone carefully, his mind flashing back to that devastating day when Evelyn had walked in on Cassandra's staged scene. Never again would he let his guard down. Never again would he risk losing what mattered most. "The baby," he confirmed, maintaining professional distance. "Evelyn says she's been doing somersaults all day." Nora leaned closer than necessary. "You know, most men would have taken advantage of their ex-wife's situation to explore their options. Most men aren't me." He moved back smoothly, his voice firm. "Evelyn isn't just my ex-wife. She's the mother of my child, the love of my life, and the only woman I'm interested in exploring anything with." The week that followed tested his resolve in ways that reminded him painfully of Cassandra's campaign. Nora was relentless. Late-night meeting requests, accidental encounters at his favorite restaurants, even showing up at his gym during his morning workout. Each time, he thought of Evelyn, of her face that day in his office, of her tears signing the divorce papers, of her smile during recent ultrasounds. Each memory strengthened his determination. During a particularly aggressive attempt at his favorite coffee shop, Julian finally confronted the situation head-on. "Miss Kim," he said as she accidentally spilled coffee on his shirt, "I understand what you're doing. I understand why. But let me be absolutely clear. My heart belongs to Evelyn. It always has, even when I was too blind to show it properly." "Such devotion," Nora mocked gently, "even when she's not here to witness it." "Especially then." He dabbed at his shirt with a napkin. "Because real change isn't about who's watching. It's about who you are when no one is looking." That evening, alone in his office, Julian pulled out his journal, a habit he'd developed during therapy after Evelyn left. He wrote about the day's encounters, his feelings, his determination to be worthy of a second chance. "Today was another test, another reminder of how I failed before. But every temptation, every opportunity to stray, only proves what I've known since the moment Evelyn walked away. She's the only one, the only woman I want, the only future I can imagine, the only love worth fighting for." His phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn, making his heart leap. "Baby's kicking like crazy. She always gets active when I review board documents." He smiled, replying, "The brilliant businesswoman Jean must be dominant." Her response came quickly. "Or maybe she just hates quarterly reports as much as her daddy used to." He laughed out loud. These moments, these simple, precious exchanges, meant everything. They were rebuilding trust, text by text, smile by smile, ultrasound by ultrasound. The final test came during the charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Julian stood on the rooftop garden, reviewing Evelyn's latest pregnancy update, when Nora appeared in a dress that left little to the imagination. "Beautiful night," she purred, swaying closer, Almost as beautiful as you look in that tux. Miss Kim, his voice carried a warning. This has gone far enough. Has it? She reached for his tie, but he caught her wrist gently. You can tell Evelyn she has nothing to worry about. He released her hand and stepped back. I knew about the test from the beginning. I played along because I understood her need for certainty. But I think we've proven what we needed to prove. Nora's practiced seduction fell away, replaced by genuine surprise. How long have you known? Since your first meeting. You're good, but Cassandra was better. He smiled without humor. I learned to recognize the signs. Had to, after losing everything that mattered. And you're not angry about the test? How could I be? He showed her his phone screen, a photo of Evelyn from their recent doctor's appointment, her hand cradling her bump, her smile radiant. I lost her trust once, through my own blindness. I'll take any test, any challenge, any chance to prove I've changed. Just then, his phone lit up with a video call from Evelyn. His heart jumped at her name on the screen. Excuse me, he told Nora, already moving away. I need to take this. In a quiet corner of the rooftop, he answered the call. Evelyn's face filled his screen, her chestnut hair messy, her eyes tired but bright. She was in bed, propped up against their old headboard, looking so beautiful it made his chest ache. Hey, she said softly, am I interrupting the gala? Never. You okay? Is the baby? We're fine. She shifted, and he could see she was wearing one of his old t-shirts, the one she'd claimed during their honeymoon. I wanted to see you. The simple admission made his throat tight. I miss you too, Eve. She blushed slightly. I didn't say I missed you. You didn't have to. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with things unsaid. In the background of his video, Nora could be seen watching their interaction. How's the test going? Evelyn asked quietly. Julian's laugh was soft. You knew I knew. I suspected. She touched her screen, almost like she was trying to reach through it to touch him. I'm sorry, Julian. I shouldn't have. Yes, you should have. He turned away from the gala, making this moment just for them. After everything with Cassandra, after I let you believe the worst, you needed to be sure. I understand that. And now? Now I hope you're starting to believe that you're it for me. Evelyn Hart. You and our little gymnast in there. She smiled, one hand moving to her rounded belly. She does seem to be practicing for the Olympics today, especially when she hears your voice. Want me to sing to her? God, no, your singing might scar her for life. They both laughed, remembering his infamous attempt at karaoke during their honeymoon. For a moment, it felt like before, just them, just their love, just their shared joy. Julian, her voice was tentative now. Would you come over after the gala? She really is active tonight, and sometimes when you talk to her, I'll be there in 20 minutes. The gala doesn't end for hours. He was already moving toward the exit. Suddenly feeling under the weather. Very tragic. Have to leave early. Her laugh followed him through the ballroom. He passed Nora, who was now deep in conversation with a venture capitalist. Test over, he murmured as he passed her. I'm choosing Evelyn. I'll always choose Evelyn. At Evelyn's penthouse, he found her in the nursery they'd started planning together. She stood by the window, moonlight silvering her hair, one hand resting on her bump as she looked out over the city. Hey, stranger, he said softly. She turned, and his breath caught at the sight of her in his old t-shirt, her face free of makeup, her guard finally lowered. Hey yourself, she smiled. That was a quick 20 minutes. Traffic was surprisingly cooperative when I told my driver it was a baby emergency. It's not an emergency. She moved closer, taking his hand and placing it where their daughter was kicking. She just misses her daddy. The word daddy made his eyes sting. Just her? Evelyn looked up at him, vulnerability clear in her hazel eyes. No, she whispered, not just her. In that moment, facing her honest admission, every test and trial had been worth it. Because sometimes love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Sometimes it was about proving yourself in small moments, about choosing the same person every day, about being worthy of the trust you'd lost and were fighting to regain. Stay, she asked softly. Just stay and talk to her." "To us?" Julian smiled, his thumb brushing her cheek. "For as long as you'll let me." And as they settled onto the window seat, Evelyn tucked against his chest while he told their daughter stories about her mother's bravery and brilliance, Julian knew with absolute certainty that he would spend the rest of his life proving himself worthy of this second chance. Because they were worth everything. Chapter 6. The Truth Emerges. The waiting room of Manhattan's most prestigious obstetrics practice felt more like a luxury spa than a medical office. Yet Evelyn couldn't relax into the plush seating, her fingers twisting the gold necklace she still wore. Today was the detailed anatomy scan, their first real look at their daughter's face. Julian sat beside her, pretending to read emails on his phone while actually watching her from the corner of his eye. She'd been quiet all morning, more withdrawn than usual. He wanted to reach for her hand, to ask what was wrong, but their fragile new peace felt too precious to risk. Evelyn Hart, the nurse called. They followed her to the examination room, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Evelyn changed into the provided gown behind a screen while Julian studied the diagrams on the wall, trying to give her privacy. "The technician will be in shortly," the nurse said, closing the door behind her. In the sudden quiet, Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "I found Cassandra's resignation letter." Julian's heart stopped. He turned slowly to face her, finding her perched on the edge of the examination table, looking small and vulnerable in the oversized gown. "How?" "It was in the board meeting minutes from the day after." She swallowed hard. "After I left. You didn't just fire her. You made her sign an NDA, forfeit her shares, her options." "Yes." His voice was rough. "It was the least I could do. Why didn't you tell me? When I first found you with her, why didn't you explain?" The pain in her voice made him ache. He moved closer, careful to maintain enough distance that she wouldn't feel crowded. "Because in that moment, seeing your face, seeing how betrayed you looked," he ran a hand through his hair. "I hated myself for letting it happen, for being so blind to Cassandra's manipulation, for putting work before you so many times that you could believe, even for a second, that I would cheat. But you didn't." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "You never did." "No, but I might as well have for how much I hurt you." A knock at the door interrupted them, the ultrasound technician arriving with the doctor. For the next 30 minutes, they watched in wonder as their daughter's features came into focus on the screen. Her tiny nose, her perfect fingers, her strong heartbeat. "Would you like to know the gender?" the doctor asked, though they'd already learned it in the previous scan. "It's a girl," Evelyn said softly, her hand finding Julian's without conscious thought. "Our little girl." After the appointment, they stood awkwardly in the hallway, neither ready to part ways. Evelyn spoke first. "Come home with me. We need to talk. Really talk." The ride to her penthouse was silent, both lost in thought. In the elevator, Julian noticed Evelyn's hands trembling slightly and fought the urge to hold them. Inside her apartment, their old home, Evelyn went straight to her home office. She returned with a file, settling onto the sofa and patting the space beside her. "Show me everything," she said. "I need to understand exactly what happened that day." Julian took a deep breath and began to explain. He told her about Cassandra's increasing attempts to get closer to him, how he'd rejected her advances, how he'd been too focused on the company's IPO to see the danger. "She knew your routine," he explained, voice tight with old anger. "Knew you sometimes brought me lunch on Tuesdays. She waited until my assistant was at lunch, then came in talking about urgent IPO documents." Evelyn's hand found his as he described how Cassandra had practically thrown herself at him, how he'd been pushing her away when Evelyn walked in. The photos she leaked to the press later, they were carefully cropped, made it look like I was holding her instead of pushing her back. Evelyn finished. She'd seen those photos, had tortured herself with them for months. Julian nodded, pulling out his phone to show her emails, security footage, timestamps, the formal investigation his team had conducted. "But why didn't you fight for us?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "Why did you let me believe it?" "Because I was ashamed." He turned to face her fully. "Not of cheating, I never betrayed our vows, Eve. But I was ashamed that I'd let work consume me so much that someone like Cassandra could get close enough to hurt you. That I'd missed all the warning signs, that I'd failed to protect the one thing that mattered most. So you let me walk away? I thought. His voice caught. I thought you deserved better than a husband who'd put his company before your happiness, who'd been so caught up in spreadsheets and IPO valuations that he missed dinner dates and anniversary plans, who'd let another woman get close enough to destroy your trust. Evelyn was crying openly now, pregnancy hormones making her emotions overflow. You idiot, she whispered. I didn't need perfect. I just needed you. I know that now. He reached up slowly, brushing away her tears. These past months without you, they've taught me what really matters. Not the company valuations or the board meetings or the media coverage. Just you, our family. Their daughter chose that moment to kick, making Evelyn gasp. She grabbed Julian's hand, placing it where their baby moved. She agrees, Evelyn said with a watery laugh. Smart girl. Julian smiled, then grew serious. I know I don't deserve a second chance, Evelyn. But if you're willing to try, I swear I'll spend every day proving that you and our daughter are my first priority. Always. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting over his on her belly. I read the investigator's report, she said finally, about what really happened that day. But seeing the resignation letter, realizing how quickly you acted to protect the company, to protect me, I would have burned the whole company down if it meant keeping you, he said fiercely. I should have fought harder for us, should have made you listen, should have camped outside your door until you heard the truth. Instead, I let pride and shame silence me. We both made mistakes. Evelyn's voice was soft. I should have known you better than to believe you'd cheat. Should have looked deeper than those cropped photos and media speculation. You had every right to walk away after what you saw. Maybe. She squeezed his hand. But I'm glad I didn't walk so far that we couldn't find our way back. Hope bloomed in Julian's chest. Does this mean? It means I'm tired of being afraid. Evelyn shifted closer, her hazel eyes meeting his. Tired of letting the past poison our future. Tired of pretending I don't still love you. Evelyn. His voice was rough with emotion. I'm not saying everything is fixed, she cautioned. We still have work to do, trust to rebuild. But she guided his hand to where their daughter was kicking again. Maybe we can rebuild it together. Julian gathered her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her jasmine perfume. Together, he promised, however long it takes, whatever you need. I'm not letting go this time. They sat like that for a long time, his hand on her growing belly, her head tucked under his chin. Outside, Manhattan's lights began to twinkle as dusk fell. But inside their bubble, time seemed to stand still. Stay for dinner, Evelyn asked finally. She's always calmer when she hears your voice. Just her? The question was gentle, hopeful. Evelyn smiled against his chest. No, she admitted, not just her. As Julian ordered their favorite takeout and Evelyn changed into comfortable clothes, both felt the shift in their relationship. The truth hadn't magically fixed everything, but it had cleared the way for healing. Sometimes the hardest storms were necessary to clear the air, to make room for new growth, new understanding, new beginnings. And as they sat together on their old couch, sharing food and stories and gentle touches, both knew that this time they would weather any storm together. Chapter 7. Healing Waters. The boardroom of Serene Life Co. buzzed with tension as Evelyn finished her presentation. Her company's global expansion plans were ambitious. Wellness centers in Dubai, Singapore, and London, paired with a revolutionary update to their mental health app. At 6 months pregnant, she commanded the room with a grace that made Julian's heart swell with pride. Any questions? She asked, one hand resting unconsciously on her pronounced bump. The investors exchanged glances. Finally, one spoke up. Miss Hart, while the expansion plans are impressive, there are concerns about timing, with your personal situation. My pregnancy? Evelyn's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Or do you mean my ex-husband's presence in the room? Julian straightened in his chair at the end of the table. He'd been quietly taking notes, careful to maintain professional distance despite his overwhelming urge to defend her. Both, frankly, the investor admitted. The media attention on our reconciliation has doubled our app downloads. Evelyn interrupted smoothly. Our user engagement is up 40% since the press started covering our co-parenting journey. Turns out, people relate to real stories of growth and healing. She clicked to the next slide, showing remarkable growth metrics. Julian hid a smile behind his hand. She'd always been brilliant at turning perceived weaknesses into strengths. After the meeting, they lingered in her office, the Manhattan sunset painting the room in gold. "You were amazing," Julian said, watching her kick off her heels with a sigh of relief. "They're still treating me like I'm made of glass." She rubbed her lower back. Pregnant, not incompetent. Without thinking, Julian moved behind her chair, his hands replacing hers on her back. She tensed for a moment, then relaxed into his touch. "You showed them," he murmured, working out the knots of tension, though I'm not sure using our personal life as a marketing strategy was in the PR plan. Evelyn laughed softly. "Says the man whose company's stock jumped 10% when photos of you at my doctor's appointments leaked. Turns out, investors like reformed workaholics." His thumbs found a particularly tight spot, making her groan. "Speaking of which, have you thought about my suggestion?" he asked. She turned in her chair to face him, her expression softening. "About moving back in to help with the pregnancy?" "Just temporarily," he added quickly. "The penthouse is closer to your doctor, and with the third trimester approaching—" "Julian." She bit her lip. "We're in a good place right now. What if living together complicates things?" He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Then we'll handle it together, like we've been handling everything else." Their daughter kicked, as if adding her vote. Evelyn smiled, guiding one of his hands to her belly. "She's getting stronger," he observed, amazed as always by the movement under his palm. Like her mama. Like both her parents. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. They'd been careful these past weeks, rebuilding trust through actions rather than words. But moments like this made it hard to remember why they were taking things slow. Evelyn broke the tension first, standing carefully. "Walk me home." The early summer evening was perfect for walking, the city humming with energy around them. They took their time, stopping at their old favorite places, the coffee shop where they'd first met, the park bench where he'd first kissed her, the Italian restaurant where he'd proposed. "Remember that night?" Evelyn asked as they passed the restaurant's warm glow. "You were so nervous you knocked over the wine on my white dress." Julian groaned. "Yet you still said yes, because you immediately took off your suit jacket to cover the stain." She smiled at the memory. "You cared more about my embarrassment than your $1,000 jacket. I cared more about you than anything." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Evelyn stopped walking, turning to face him. "And now?" "Now," he stepped closer, giving her time to move away. She didn't now. "I understand what that really means. It's not just about grand gestures or protected clothing. It's about being there, really being there." As if to prove his point, he pulled a small bottle of water and her prenatal vitamins from his pocket. She always forgot her evening dose. Tears welled in her eyes as she accepted them. "You remembered." "I remember everything now, Eve. Every appointment, every craving, every little detail you mention." He brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. "Because that's what love really is, not the big moments, but all the tiny ones in between." They resumed walking, her hand finding his naturally. When they reached her building, Evelyn didn't immediately head inside. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes?" "Yes, to moving in." "Temporarily," she added with a small smile. For the baby," he agreed, though his heart soared. "I'll take the guest room." "The guest room needs to be the nursery." Their eyes met again, the implications clear. Before either could speak, Evelyn's phone chimed with a calendar reminder. The birthing class she'd remembered. "It's tonight." "I can skip it," Julian offered, "if it's too much, too soon." "No." She squeezed his hand. "I want you there. Need you there, actually. The breathing exercises work better with a partner." An hour later, they sat on yoga mats in a room full of expectant parents. Evelyn settled between his legs as the instructor demonstrated relaxation techniques, her back pressed against his chest, her head resting on his shoulder as they breathed together. "Good, Mr. and Mrs. Reed," the instructor praised as she passed. Neither corrected her. After class, They ordered takeout and ate on Evelyn's terrace, planning the nursery design between bites of pad thai. It felt domestic, comfortable, right. "I was thinking about names," Evelyn said as they cleared the containers. Julian's heart skipped. They hadn't discussed names yet. It felt too intimate, somehow. "Yeah?" "Stella," she said softly. "It means star, light in the darkness, like hope after a storm." He smiled, understanding the metaphor. "Like us." She moved closer, allowing him to wrap his arms around her from behind as they looked out over the city. "Stella Reed," he tested the name, feeling Evelyn relax against him. "It's perfect." They stood there for a long time, his hands curved protectively around their daughter, Evelyn's fingers intertwined with his. Neither mentioned how natural it felt, how right. They didn't need to. Later that night, as Julian prepared to leave, Evelyn caught his hand. "Stay," she whispered. Not like that. Just stay. The guest room can be the nursery tomorrow." Understanding dawned. "Are you sure?" "More." She nodded, vulnerability and strength mixing in her eyes. "I'm tired of fighting what we both feel. Tired of pretending we're just co-parents when we're so much more. We can take it slow," he promised. "No pressure." "I know." She smiled, leading him toward their old bedroom. "But I sleep better when you're close." So does Stella. As they lay in bed later, Evelyn curled against his side while he read pregnancy books aloud to their daughter. Julian felt peace settle over him. They weren't fully healed yet. Trust was still a tender shoot, growing stronger each day but needing careful nurturing. But they were together, their daughter safe between them, their love deeper for having been tested. Sometimes, he realized, you had to lose everything to understand what really mattered. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got a second chance to prove you'd learned your lesson. As Evelyn drifted off to sleep, her hand clasped in his over their growing daughter, Julian silently vowed to never take this miracle for granted again. Because some storms didn't destroy, they cleared the air for new growth, new understanding, new beginnings. And their new beginning was just starting. Chapter 8. The Shower. Dawn painted Manhattan's skyline in watercolor hues as Julian adjusted another centerpiece at the New York Botanical Garden. White peonies and blue hydrangeas caught the early morning light, their petals still kissed with dew. He'd been here since 4 o'clock a.m., overseeing every detail personally. The florist had thought him crazy, wanting fresh flowers arranged at dawn. But he remembered Evelyn mentioning once, 3 years ago, how flowers were most fragrant in the morning light. "Mr. Reed," his assistant approached hesitantly. "The caterers need approval for the organic tea station setup, and the string quartet has questions about acoustics. The tea goes by the east windows. Evelyn loves morning sun while she drinks. And tell the quartet to set up near the fountain. She always said the sound of water makes music more soothing." He straightened another flower. "How's the surprise coming?" "Hidden in the orchid room, exactly as planned." Every detail had been meticulously chosen, each element a callback to their shared history. The crystal teardrops hanging from the ceiling matched those from their first charity gala together. The table settings featured the exact shade of blue from the dress she'd worn when they met. Even the morning glory vines climbing the trellises were meaningful. They'd been blooming. The morning he first told her he loved her. At precisely 11 a.m., Nora led a blindfolded Evelyn into the garden's glass-enclosed event space. Julian's breath caught at the sight of her. 7 months pregnant, radiant in a flowing silk dress that made her look like a goddess of spring. When the blindfold came off, Evelyn's gasp of delight made all the sleepless nights of planning worth it. "Julian." She turned slowly, taking in the transformed space. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, creating rainbow prisms that danced across the walls. "You remembered everything." "How could I forget?" He moved to her side, one hand finding its familiar place on her bump. "Every detail of us is precious to me now, even the ones I once took for granted." Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of guests. Family, close friends, key employees from both their companies. Evelyn glowed as she opened carefully chosen gifts. Organic baby clothes made from sustainable materials because she'd once mentioned caring about eco-friendly fashion. Educational toys that played classical music. remembering how she told him about studies on prenatal musical development, a state-of-the-art baby monitor system that his tech team had enhanced with additional security features. Now for the real surprise, he whispered in her ear as the last present was opened, leading her to the orchid room. Julian felt his heart race. The glass doors opened to reveal a miniature version of their first meeting place. The Stanford coffee shop where startup founder Evelyn had pitched her wellness app idea to venture capitalist Julian. Every detail was perfect. The worn leather armchairs, the chalkboard menu with its misspelled specialty drinks, even the exact table where they'd sat for 4 hours, falling in love while discussing business models and market penetration. "You recreated it," she breathed, running her fingers along the familiar scratches in the table's surface. "This is where our story began," he said softly, "where I first fell in love with your passion, your brilliance, your determination to help people live better lives." Evelyn touched the table's worn edge. "You told me my valuation was too low. Because I didn't see how extraordinary you were, how extraordinary you are." He guided her to sit in one of the armchairs. "I was supposed to give you 15 minutes. We talked until they kicked us out at closing. And you insisted on walking me to my car, even though you said you didn't need an escort." "I didn't." He agreed. "You never needed anyone. That's what makes it so precious that you're choosing to need me now." Fresh tears filled her eyes. "Damn pregnancy hormones. Blame them all you want." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his rope. "But I hope some of those tears are happy ones." "They are." She squeezed his fingers. "I thought when everything fell apart, I thought those memories would always be tainted. But being here, seeing how you remember every detail, I remember everything about us, Eve. The good and the bad, the triumphs and the mistakes. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of our lives making new memories. Better ones." Their daughter kicked then, making them both laugh. "I think she approves," Evelyn said softly. "Smart girl." Julian pressed a kiss to her bump. "Takes after her mother. And her father." Evelyn's free hand found his hair, fingers threading through it gently. "The man who arranged her baby shower at dawn to make sure the flowers were perfect." Speaking of perfect, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "I have one more surprise." Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, identical to the one she'd worn the day they met, the one she'd lost during their honeymoon. "How did you?" "I had it recreated from our old photos. Same jeweler, same design." He fastened it around her wrist with trembling fingers. Because some things deserve a second chance at perfection. Evelyn stared at the bracelet, then at him, understanding the metaphor. Before she could speak, Nora's voice called from the main room. "Evelyn, the cake cutting." "We should get back," Julian said, helping her up. But Evelyn didn't move toward the door. Instead, she stepped closer, one hand on his chest for balance. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for this, for everything. For proving that sometimes the sequel can be better than the original story." Then, for the first time since their reunion, she kissed him. It was soft, sweet, full of promise. When she pulled back, her eyes shining, Julian felt his world shift back into perfect alignment. "I love you," he breathed. "Both of you." "We love you too." She smiled, taking his hand. "Now come on, our daughter wants cake." The rest of the shower passed in a blur of joy and celebration. Evelyn sat in a flower-adorned chair while guests shared their wishes for the baby, writing them on delicate paper butterflies that would later decorate the nursery. Julian never left her side, attentive to her every need, adjusting pillows behind her back, making sure her tea was always fresh, watching her face light up with each thoughtful gift and message. During a quiet moment, while guests mingled over champagne and mocktails, Evelyn tugged him close. "I found something in the coffee shop recreation," she said softly, pulling out a small, worn business card from that first meeting. "You wrote your personal number on the back. You kept it." He stared at his own handwriting, faded but still legible. "It was in my wallet when everything happened. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away." She placed it in his hand. "Some things are meant to be kept, even when they hurt, because sometimes the pain reminds us of what's worth fighting for." Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind, both hands cradling their daughter as they watched their loved ones celebrate the new life they'd created. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving it was worth it," he promised against her hair. "Worth the fight. Worth the pain. Worth the waiting." "I know." She leaned back against his chest. "That's why I'm not afraid anymore." As the party wound down, neither noticed Nora snapping a photo of them swaying gently to the quartet's music, Evelyn's head on Julian's shoulder, his hands protective around their child. The photo would go viral later, tech's greatest love story, the reunion, but in that moment, surrounded by flowers and friends and the future they were rebuilding together, Evelyn and Julian were focused only on each other and the little miracle dancing between them. Because sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in soil that storms have enriched, and sometimes the sweetest love stories are the ones that prove that true love, like the rarest flowers, can bloom again after the harshest winter. Their winter was over. Spring had finally arrived. Chapter 9, Crisis Point. The boardroom of Serene Life Co. hummed with anticipation as Evelyn delivered her quarterly projections. At 7 months pregnant, she commanded attention in a tailored navy maternity dress. Her chestnut hair swept up elegantly. Julian watched from his seat at the far end, pride warring with concern. She'd seemed pale at breakfast, though she dismissed his worries. Mid-sentence, Evelyn suddenly swayed, her hand flying to her stomach. The color drained from her face so quickly it made Julian's heart stop. "I'm fine," she insisted, waving off concerned murmurs. "Just got a little." Her voice trailed off as her knees buckled. Julian caught her before she could fall, gathering her into his arms as chaos erupted around them. The look of terror in her eyes would haunt him forever. "The baby," she whispered, clutching his shirt. "Julian, I can't feel her moving." His world narrowed to her face, to the precious life they'd created, to the thundering of his own heart. "Someone call 911, he roared, already moving toward the door. "And get Dr. Thompson on the phone. Tell her we're coming." The elevator ride was endless. Evelyn's breathing grew shallow, her skin clammy against his neck where she'd buried her face. "Talk to me, love," he pleaded, trying to keep his voice steady. "Stay with me. I'm scared," she admitted in a tiny voice that broke his heart. "What if I failed her? What if working too hard?" "Hey, no." He pressed his lips to her forehead. "You haven't failed anyone. Our little Stella is strong, just like her mama. We're going to get through this." The ambulance met them in the lobby. As paramedics transferred Evelyn to a stretcher, Julian felt physical pain at letting her go. High blood pressure, possible preeclampsia, one EMT reported, attaching monitors. History of pregnancy complications? No, but she's been under stress. Julian's voice caught as he climbed in beside her. "She's a CEO." "Sir, you need to let us work." But Evelyn's hand shot out, grabbing his. "Don't leave me," she begged, eyes wild with fear. "Please, Julian." "Never again," he promised fiercely, lacing their fingers together. "I'm right here, baby. Right here with both of you." The ride to Mount Sinai was a blur of sirens and medical terminology. Julian focused on Evelyn's face, on whispered encouragements, on prayers he hadn't said since childhood. When her eyes started to flutter closed, panic clawed at his throat. "Stay with me, Eve. Remember our first date? That fancy French place lost our reservation." He squeezed her hand, desperate to keep her engaged. "Tell me, what happened next?" "Pizza," she mumbled. "Got saucy on my dress." "That's right. And what did I do?" "Gave me your jacket." Another contraction hit, and she squeezed his hands harder. "Because even then, I knew you were the most precious thing in my world. Just like now. Just like always." At the hospital, they tried to separate them. Evelyn's panic spiked the monitors. "Sir, you need to wait outside," a nurse insisted. "He stays, Dr. Thompson appeared, already gowned. "Mr. Reed's presence keeps her calmer. We need that right now." The next hours were torture. Tests, monitors, medications. Julian never left Evelyn's side, his thumb rubbing circles on her hand as doctors debated treatment options. "Preeclampsia, Dr. Thompson finally confirmed. "We've stabilized her blood pressure, but she'll need complete bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. Any stress could trigger another episode. Whatever she needs, Julian said immediately. Just tell me how to help them. Back in Evelyn's hospital room, he found her looking small and vulnerable in the large bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. Her hand rested protectively on her bump. "Hey, stranger," she whispered when he entered. "Hey yourself." He moved to her side, kissing her knuckles. "You scared me, Eve." "I scared myself." Her voice trembled. "When I couldn't feel her moving God, Julian, I've never been so terrified." "She's okay," he assured her quickly. "They're monitoring both of you. Our little Stella is tough, just like her mama. I keep thinking about that day when I left." Evelyn's eyes filled with fresh tears. "How could I have walked away carrying our child? How could I have risked—" "Shh." He sat carefully on the edge of her bed. "You didn't know then, and I hadn't given you reason to trust me. But you've given me every reason now." She tugged him closer. "The way you caught me, the way you kept me focused in the ambulance, you've become the man I always needed you to be." "Had to." He brushed her hair back from her forehead. "Almost losing you once taught me what really matters. I won't make that mistake again." The next days passed in a rhythm of doctor's rounds and vital sign checks. Julian never left her side, working from a makeshift office he'd set up in her hospital room. When she was discharged with strict bed rest orders, he simply moved his operation to their bedroom at home. "You don't have to stay," Evelyn protested weakly as he set up his laptop beside her bed. "I can hire a nurse. Try to make me leave." His voice was gentle but firm. "I'm exactly where I need to be." He learned to take conference calls while giving her foot rubs, to review contracts while timing her medication doses. He memorized her new cravings, learned which positions helped her back pain, became an expert at arranging her pregnancy pillows just right. Late one night, during a particularly bad bout of discomfort, Evelyn grabbed his hand in a panic. "Something's wrong," she gasped. "The pain." They were in the emergency room within minutes. Hours of monitoring revealed it had been false labor, but the fear in Evelyn's eyes haunted Julian. "I'm here," he whispered as they lay in her hospital bed, her back against his chest while monitors beeped, reassuringly. "I've got you both." "I know." She laced her fingers through his where they rested on her bump. "You're my forever, Julian, whether I was ready to admit it or not." His heart stuttered. "Eve." "I mean it." She turned her head to meet возможные eyes. "These past weeks, watching you drop everything to take care of us, you're not just here for Stella. You're here for me too, the way you always should have been, the way I always needed you to be, the way I always will be." He pressed his lips to her temple. "You and our daughter, you're everything. The companies, the success, none of it means anything without you." Stella kicked then, strong and healthy, making them both laugh softly. "See," Julian murmured. "She agrees." "Smart girl." Evelyn snuggled closer into his embrace. "Takes after her daddy, the man who finally learned that no business deal is worth missing a moment with the people you love." As Evelyn drifted off to sleep in his arms, Julian sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. The crisis had been terrifying, but it had also shown them both what truly mattered. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about being there in the scary times, the quiet times, the times when nothing else mattered except holding each other close. Sometimes it took almost losing everything to understand what everything really meant. And as he held his whole world in his arms, feeling their daughter's strong kicks against his palm, Julian knew with absolute certainty that he would never take this miracle for granted again. Because sometimes love wasn't about the falling, it was about the catching. And this time, he would always be there to catch them both. Chapter 10. The Letter. Evelyn's mandatory bed rest had turned their bedroom into a makeshift office, with laptops, tablets, and documents scattered across the king-size bed. At 8 months pregnant, she'd finally accepted that running her empire required accepting help, especially from Julian, who had practically moved his entire operation into their home. "The Singapore expansion contracts need your signature," she said, sorting through a stack of papers while propped up against her pregnancy pillows. Stella was particularly active today, making it hard to concentrate. "They can wait." Julian appeared in the doorway with her afternoon smoothie, the exact blend of spinach, berries, and prenatal supplements her doctor had recommended. Doctor's orders. No stressful business decisions until your blood pressure stabilizes. Evelyn accepted the smoothie with a grateful smile. These past weeks of enforced rest had shown her a side of Julian she'd only glimpsed before. Nurturing, attentive, completely focused on her and their daughter's well-being. "I need to organize my home office," she said after finishing her drink. "There are board documents I should review." "I'll get them." "Which files?" "No, I need to do it myself. Some things only I know where to find." She gave him her best pleading look. "Just help me to the office." 5 minutes, I promise." Julian hesitated, but they both knew he could never resist when she looked at him that way. 5 minutes, he agreed, then straight back to bed. The short walk to her home office left Evelyn slightly breathless, a reminder of why bed rest was necessary. Julian's arm around her waist supported most of her weight, his touch both familiar and thrilling. Her office was exactly as she'd left it the day of her collapse. Papers were still scattered across the desk. As she began sorting through them, a thick envelope slipped from between two folders, landing near Julian's feet. He picked it up, then froze. Evelyn saw his face pale. "What is it?" "My letter," he whispered. "The one I wrote after you left. I thought I'd burned it." Evelyn's heart skipped. "What letter?" Julian stared at the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. "I wrote it the night after you walked away. After Cassandra. After everything. I was going to send it, but I convinced myself you deserved better than my explanations." "Show me." Her voice was soft, uncertain. He hesitated. "Eve. Please." Carefully, she settled into her office chair while Julian perched on the edge of her desk. The envelope was wrinkled, water-stained in places. When he finally opened it, Evelyn gasped softly. The paper inside was covered in tear marks, the ink smudged but still legible. "My dearest Evelyn," Julian began reading, his voice rough with emotion. "Today you walked away, and I let you go the biggest mistake of my life. It wasn't what you saw in my office. It was not running after you, not fighting for us, not making you understand the truth. My pride and shame silenced me when I should have been screaming my innocence from every rooftop in Manhattan. The truth is, I failed you long before Cassandra's manipulations. I failed you every time I chose a board meeting over dinner, every time I let work pull me away from our life together. I became the man I swore I'd never be, someone who took love for granted. You deserved better than a husband who made you doubt his devotion, better than a man who let his fear of inadequacy mask itself as workaholism, better than someone who couldn't protect you from others' schemes because he was too blind to see the danger. I keep replaying every moment of our marriage, seeing all the times I should have chosen you, all the times I should have shown you that no deal, no company, no success meant anything without you beside me. The irony is that losing you has taught me what I should have known all along, that true wealth isn't measured in stock prices or market caps. It's measured in the way you smile in the morning sunlight, the sound of your laugh during our Sunday brunches, the feeling of your hand in mine as we walk through the city that brought us together. I want to tell you about Cassandra's plot, about how she orchestrated everything, knowing you might visit that day, but explanations feel hollow now. The truth is, even if that day had never happened, I was already losing you through 1,000 tiny moments of neglect. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone, but I always knew what I had in you, Evelyn. I just foolishly thought you would always be there, no matter how many times I put other things first. Today, watching you walk away, I wanted to run after you, to beg forgiveness, to promise change, to fight for the love we built. But you deserved more than promises. You deserved actions. You deserved a man who would move heaven and earth to be worthy of your trust again. I don't know if you'll ever read this letter. Part of me hopes you won't, that you'll find the happiness you deserve with someone who understands from the start what I learned too late. But the selfish part of me hopes that someday, somehow, I'll have the chance to prove that I can be the man you always deserved. Until then, know that I love you, that I will always love you, that every success, every achievement, every moment of my life will be hollow without you, to share it with. Forever yours, Julian. Silence filled the office as he finished reading. Evelyn's tears fell freely, matching the stains on the paper. "Why didn't you send it?" she whispered. "Because I thought you deserved better than words." His voice was thick with emotion. "I thought you deserved actions, proof, change. I never dreamed we'd get a second chance. But we did." She reached for his hand, placing it on her bump where Stella kicked steadily. "We got the most precious second chance of all." Julian knelt beside her chair, his free hand cupping her cheek. "I meant every word then, and I mean them even more now. You're everything, Evelyn. You and Stella, you're my whole world." "Read it again," she asked softly. "The part about Sunday brunches." He smiled through his own tears, finding the passage, but before he could begin reading, Evelyn gasped. "Eve?" Alarm filled his voice. "She's moving so much," Evelyn breathed. "Like she knows this is important. Like she's been waiting for us to find this letter." Julian pressed a gentle kiss to her bump. "Smart girl. Knows her parents needed a little push. We've been so careful," Evelyn mused, running her fingers through his hair, so afraid of rushing, of making mistakes. "But reading this, knowing you wrote this the day I left, I meant every word. I know." She tugged him up gently until their faces were level. "That's why I'm not afraid anymore." Their kiss was soft, sweet, full of promise. When they parted, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "Both of you. More than anything, we love you too." Evelyn smiled through her tears. "Now take us back to bed before you get in trouble for letting me stay up too long." As Julian carried her carefully back to their bedroom, the letter remained on her desk, a testament to the pain they'd overcome, the growth they'd achieved, the love that had never truly died. Sometimes the most important words were the ones left unsent, and sometimes, when the time was finally right, they found their way home anyway, just like they had. Chapter 11. New Beginnings. Their daughter decided to make her entrance into the world on a stormy Manhattan night, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Evelyn woke to sharp contractions and a familiar warmth beside her. Julian had taken to sleeping in a chair next to her bed, unwilling to be far from her during these final weeks. "Julian," she whispered, reaching for his hand in the darkness. "It's time." He was instantly alert, years of CEO-level crisis management kicking in. But this was different from any corporate emergency. This was their miracle, their second chance, their future arriving ahead of schedule. "Are you sure? The contractions?" 5 minutes apart. Evelyn smiled through her discomfort. "She's impatient, like her father. Determined," he corrected, helping her sit up, like her mother. The drive to the hospital was surreal, rain lashing against the windows of their town car as Julian held Evelyn close, timing contractions on his phone while whispering encouragement in her ear. She clutched his hand through each wave of pain, no longer pretending she didn't need him. "Remember what the doctor said about your blood pressure," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Just breathe with me, love. I've got you both." In the delivery room, hours blurred together. Evelyn's complicated pregnancy meant extra monitoring, extra precautions. Julian never left her side, supporting her through every contraction, every moment of fear, every triumph. "You're the strongest person I know," he told her as she gripped his hands, sweat dampening her chestnut hair. "You can do this. We can do this. Tell me a story." She gasped between contractions. "Distract me. Remember our first real date?" He wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. "When I tried to impress you with that fancy French restaurant, and they lost our reservation?" Evelyn finished, managing a small laugh that turned into a groan. "So we ended up at that hole-in-the-wall pizza place instead. You got sauce on your designer dress. You gave me your jacket to cover it." Another contraction hit, and she squeezed his hands harder. "You always took care of me." "Not always," he admitted softly, "but I will for the rest of our lives." "E promise." Hours passed. The storm outside intensified, but inside their hospital room, nothing existed except their shared breath, their clasped hands, their imminent miracle. Finally, just as dawn began to break through the storm clouds, their daughter announced her arrival with a strong, healthy cry. "She's perfect," the doctor announced, placing the tiny bundle on Evelyn's chest. "Absolutely perfect." Julian stared in wonder at their creation. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a dusting of dark hair like his, Evelyn's delicate features. Tears streamed down his face as he counted each perfect detail. "Hello, Stella," Evelyn whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We've been waiting for you." "Stella Grace Reed," Julian added softly, one finger caught in his daughter's tight grip. "Our little light in the storm." Later, as Evelyn rested in her private room, Julian sat in the window seat with Stella cradled against his chest. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a pristine Manhattan morning. Everything felt new, washed clean. "I never knew I could love like this," he murmured to his sleeping daughter. "Your mama taught me how. She taught me everything important about love, about trust, about what really matters in life. She has your nose." Evelyn's tired voice came from the bed. "Poor thing." Julian turned to find her watching them with such love it made his heart ache. "How long have you been awake?" "Long enough to see what an amazing father you already are." She held out her hand. "Bring her here." He settled carefully beside her on the bed, transferring Stella to her arms. The sight of them together, his whole world in one frame, brought fresh tears to his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance. For trusting me again. For her." He touched Stella's cheek reverently. "For everything." Evelyn leaned into him, their daughter secure between them. "Thank you for becoming the man I always knew you could be." Stella stirred, her tiny face scrunching before relaxing into a perfect miniature of Evelyn's smile. They both watched in awe as she yawned, her eyes fluttering open to reveal deep blue-hazel depths. "She has your eyes," Evelyn said softly. "They might change." "No." She touched their daughter's cheek. "They're exactly like yours when you look at me like I'm the most precious thing in your world. You are." Julian's voice was rough with emotion. "Both of you are." A nurse came to check Evelyn's vitals, smiling at the picture they made. "Beautiful family," she commented. "Have you been married long?" Neither corrected her assumption. Instead, Evelyn and Julian shared a look, heavy with meaning, with possibility, with future promises waiting to be made. After the nurse left, Evelyn shifted Stella to one arm, her other hand finding Julian's up. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous," he teased, earning a weak swat. "About us. About everything we've been through. About how different everything is now." Julian's heart stuttered. "Eve, let me finish." She looked down at their daughter, gathering courage. "When I left, it was because I thought I couldn't trust you, because I thought our love wasn't strong enough to survive betrayal. But I was wrong." She met his eyes, her own shining with tears and certainty. "Our love wasn't weak. It was just untested. And now we've been through the worst storms possible, and we're still here, still choosing each other, still fighting for us. Always," he promised, pressing his lips to her temple. "So I was thinking." She smiled tremulously. "Maybe it's time to make it official again. To give Stella the family she deserves. To give us the second chance we've earned." Julian's breath caught. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you, Julian Reed. I'm saying that watching you these past months, how you've changed, how you've grown, how you've proven yourself over and over has shown me that sometimes love is better the second time around, because this time we know exactly what we're fighting for." Stella chose that moment to grasp both their fingers in her tiny hands, as if sealing their fate. "Marry me," Evelyn whispered. "Not because of her, not because of our past, but because I want our future. All of it, the good days and the hard ones, the storms and the rainbows." Julian gathered both his girls closer, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "Yes," he breathed against Evelyn's hair 1,000 times. "Yes." As if celebrating their decision, Stella let out a perfect coo, making them both laugh through happy tears. Outside, the sun broke fully through the storm clouds, painting their hospital room in golden light. It felt like a blessing, like a promise, like the perfect beginning to their next chapter. Because sometimes love stories didn't end with happily ever after. Sometimes they ended with happily ever better. And theirs was just getting started again. Chapter 12. Full Circle. The Manhattan sunset painted the sky in shades of rose and gold as Stella's first birthday celebration wound down on their penthouse terrace. Julian watched Evelyn cradling their sleeping daughter, both bathed in the dying light. Stella's dark curls were adorned with a tiny flower crown, her chubby fingers still sticky from birthday cake. At 1 year old, she was the perfect blend of them both. His intense blue-hazel eyes, Evelyn's delicate features, and a determination that was purely her own. The terrace had been transformed into an enchanted garden, with fairy lights twinkling among white peonies and blue hydrangeas, the same flowers that had marked every significant moment of their journey, from their first meeting to their original wedding, through heartbreak and reunion. These blooms had witnessed their story unfold. "Penny, for your thoughts." Evelyn appeared at his side, Stella snuggled against her shoulder. "Just thinking about how far we've come." He wrapped an arm around them both. "Remember where we were a year ago today?" Evelyn smiled, leaning into him. "In the delivery room, you were crying so hard the nurse thought something was wrong. Can you blame me? You had just given me everything I ever wanted. A second chance. Our daughter. Your trust." As the last guests departed, leaving behind echoes of laughter and celebration, Julian felt his heart racing. Everything was in place for his final surprise. "One more gift?" he asked softly, not wanting to wake their sleeping angel. "Julian." Evelyn's smile was knowing. "Haven't you planned enough surprises for one day?" The party, the custom storybook about Stella's first year, the video messages from everyone who loves her. Never enough. He took Stella gently, cradling her against his chest with practiced ease. "Follow me." The elevator ride to the rooftop was silent, filled with anticipation. When the doors opened, Evelyn's gasp made every minute of planning worth it. The entire rooftop garden had been transformed to recreate their first meeting place, but with a magical twist. The Stanford coffee shop, where startup founder Evelyn had pitched her wellness app to venture capitalist. Julian was there in every detail, but reimagined as a fairy tale setting. Fairy lights draped the recreated cafe tables, creating a canopy of stars beneath the real ones. Photos of their journey lined the walls, their first meeting, the original wedding, Stella's birth, and countless moments in between, a timeline of love lost and found again. "Dance with me," Julian asked, nodding toward a portable bassinet he'd prepared for Stella. The baby monitor was already synced to their phones, another sign of how their lives had changed and grown. Once their daughter was settled, he pulled Evelyn into his arms as their song began to play softly through hidden speakers. They swayed together under the stars, the city lights twinkling below like earthbound constellations. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" he murmured against her hair. "When I told you your company valuation was too low?" Evelyn laughed softly. "With all due respect, Mr. Reed, you're underestimating the potential of this market." "You were right. I underestimated everything about that meeting. The market, your vision, how completely you would change my life. We've both changed." She touched the spot where his tie used to be perpetually knotted, now replaced by an open collar that spoke of his new priorities. "Grown. Learned what really matters." Speaking of what matters, he led her to their old favorite table, the one where he'd first fallen in love with her passion and vision. A leather-bound journal lay waiting. "I've been writing this since the day you let me back into your life," he explained, opening it to reveal pages filled with his handwriting. "Every hope, every fear, every dream for our future." Evelyn's fingers traced the words on the first page. "To the love of my life, who taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters." "Read the last entry," he whispered with trembling fingers. She turned to the final page, dated today. "My dearest Evelyn, a year ago, you gave me back my world by trusting me with your heart again. You've taught me that true love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about choosing each other every day, through every storm and every sunrise. You and Stella are my everything, my reason for waking, my purpose for striving, my definition of home. But there's one more dream I'm hoping you'll help me make real. Look up, love." Evelyn raised her eyes from the page to find Julian on one knee beside her, holding a ring that caught the starlight like captured magic. It wasn't the massive diamond from their first engagement. Instead, it was a delicate sapphire surrounded by tiny moonstones, echoing Stella's name and their journey. "Marry me again," he said simply, "not because of our past or Stella, but because every day without you as my wife feels incomplete. Because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that second chances can be even more beautiful than first ones. Because you're my forever, Evelyn Hart, and I want the world to know it." Stella chose that moment to coo softly in her sleep, as if giving her blessing. Evelyn laughed through her tears, remembering another proposal in this very spot, another beginning that had led them here through all the twists and turns of fate. "Yes," she whispered, pulling him up to kiss him deeply. "Yes to our next chapter, yes to forever." As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, the Manhattan sky exploded with fireworks, his final surprise of the night. They watched the display with Stella cradled between them, their little family complete and stronger for all they'd overcome. "I have something for you, too," Evelyn said softly, reaching into her dress pocket. She pulled out a folded piece of paper that made Julian's breath catch. Her divorce papers from their first marriage. "I kept these as a reminder," she explained, "of what happens when pride and fear get in the way of love. But we're not those people anymore." Together, they walked to the rooftop's edge. Evelyn unfolded the papers, and with a smile that held all the promise of their future, she let them go. The wind caught the pages, carrying them away over the city that had witnessed their entire story. "I love you," Evelyn murmured, touching the ring that symbolized not just their future but their entire journey. "Thank you for becoming the man I always knew you could be. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove it." Julian kissed her softly, then smiled against her lips. "Ready for our happily ever after?" Evelyn shook her head, making his heart stop for a moment before she smiled. "No," she said, "ready for our happily ever better, because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people finding perfect love. They're about real people fighting through real storms, choosing each other again and again, and building something stronger from the pieces of what was broken." And as Evelyn and Julian danced under the stars, with their miracle sleeping peacefully beside them, they knew their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning again, better and stronger than ever before. Some loves were worth fighting for, some storms were worth weathering, and some hearts were meant to find their way back home, no matter how long the journey took. Theirs was that kind of love, the real kind, the lasting kind, the kind that turned storms into rainbows and broken pieces into masterpieces, the kind that lasted forever. As the last firework faded from the sky, Julian pulled Evelyn closer, breathing in the scent of her jasmine perfume mixed with baby powder, his new favorite combination. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For proving that some stories don't need a happily ever after. They just need two people brave enough to write a better ending." And in the end, that's exactly what they did.